How's it going, everybody? Sessiion here. Welcome to a Dead by Daylight versus overview, where we talk about how it feels like from the survivor perspective to fight against the killers. And today we have the Spirit. Now, the Spirit is a very weird killer. Probably on my list of killers that I'm not really the biggest fan going up against, knowing that the killer can be very unpredictable with the perks that they bring. There's so many different perks that the killer can bring, obviously, because they can just share it with anybody else pretty much. But I this is me doing this kind of review and overall feedback perspective while specifically playing this game after the Night DLC came out. And I got to tell you that I learned very recently that, of course, hubris being a perk that the Night brought to the table, I officially don't like Spirit. The unpredictability of her phasing is with the haunting phasing, if you will, in specificity. It's not really something that I used to dislike. I kind of understood, like, okay, like the Spirit's coming, I gotta figure out like an option, right? But the problem I think with the Spirit right now is that as a survivor, the perks that you would bring to the game as a survivor would allow me to at least check the Spirit, even like if it's like a little bit. I think right now she doesn't have any check. I also heard through the grapevine that they're basically re-nerfing her, aka they're letting you see where she's phasing when the dust is like kicking up as she runs with the haunting, which is like, it's kind of irrelevant. But even more so too, the fact that you can you can't, there's like two things that she used to have. They took that out and it buffed her, made her way stronger, and now they're bringing it back to her, and it's not really going to make a difference because the perks that you have in this game now are really, really insanely cracked. So again, the thing is that she's such a speedy killer, and her speed is heavily benefited from the ability to basically put people down to the ground ASAP. Now I know that haunting is one thing, right? But like using haunting with an expose makes her so much worse and so much more scary to deal with. Because if you use a perk like Devour, right, finding people is still kind of hard, but also Devour can be removed pretty much at any time if it does get cleansed by a survivor, which is nice. So I don't mind dealing with the Spirit if there's if they have Devour, because I can go find that totem, get rid of it, and then not have that problem later on ever again. Even the same way if the killer has Starstruck, right, the killer has to find somebody with the with their power. If I have Starstruck, right, I can hide, I can go away, I can figure it out. The killer is less likely to find me in a way of speaking if the killer has an exposed perk like Starstruck, or even like Make Your Choice and whatnot, right? I mean, Make Your Choice is a little bit harder, but again, if you really try to figure out how to utilize distance when it comes to fighting the Spirit, then Make Your Choice is not really that big of a deal. However, what I will say though is that hubris, ever since they introduced that perk combination with this killer, has made her undeniably deadly. And like I said, I dislike her now because, like, the thing that I need to do to counter the killer, she has a counter for that too. So now she, like, officially in my brain has no counter. And even making her easier to see coming doesn't really help with the idea of countering. I think that it's still going to be a very potent thing to deal with if this killer is able to do exposed stuff and still be able to stay fast always. If there was a differentiation of how this game was played, where she couldn't use other people's perks, then the killer would be a lot more manageable. Even if the killer had haunting and rancor, like, that wouldn't really be an issue to me. But like I said, ever since they introduced hubris to the game and her with that combination, I don't, this might be one of the first killers that I didn't have a problem with, and now I have a problem with. Like, I get annoyed fighting this killer knowing that she has hubris. Like I said, if she doesn't have hubris, it's honestly not that big of a deal. But because they, because hubris is a thing, that perk sucks. to put on a spirit. I hate that feeling a lot. So the perks she brings to the table, all of them are pretty good. They're also used in tandem with each other to some degree as well. It's not like it's a, you know, people use Spirit Fury a lot now because, the idea of using a palette is very, very powerful for every reason that it makes sense for. After breaking 2 pallets, you get it activates. So the third one you basically have to deal with for free, and you can instantly hit people, right? That's crazy. So again, combining this with Hubris from the Knight, this combination is crazy lethal, especially because like you don't really need to worry about breaking a pallet after getting stunned. You immediately just go get your kill and you just collect your one, and like that just is not a fun feeling. Haunted Ground, this is a perk that honestly, like, as much as it's exposed and it is what it is, this perk scares me. It really does. Because every single time that I feel like I'm safe, someone breaks a totem and I'm like, cool, someone broke a totem, and then it immediately exposes me and I'm like, crap, I have exposed because of Haunted. Every single time, it always scares me. So I get it though, it's crazy that's what that does. I don't know where Haunted fits in like the tier list of like whether it's a good or a bad perk. I feel like it's a pretty decent perk. It's like fair, because like everyone has a chance to run away and get away from the fact that like Expose activated, and also because like it was 1 or 2 chances, right, to get a totem, and boom, you got Haunted. It's kind of a pain to deal with, like low key, but I don't mind it. And then you have Rancor, which this is one of those perks that I feel like is so, again, under expected. I never really expect the killer bringing this perk in, and when they do, it's so crazy. So when a gen gets completed, the aura gets revealed to the killer, which is insane, and then everyone else can see the killer too. And then when the exit gates get opened, the killer can just mori the F out of the killer, or out of the survivor, with Rancor, and they get permanently exposed. I can't believe that is a freaking thing. That perk's scary. It's so scary. Because again, anybody can use this perk, and you never really. It's one of those perks that are very under expected. You don't ever see it coming, but then when you do, it just is. It is what it is. Which sucks, because I feel like I don't want to get caught, but then they end up being the one that gets caught, and then I die, and then I feel bad about myself. It's awful. Then we got her, her cool katana, which is a cool weapon. And then we have her power. Now the thing is that her power has seen so many changes over the course of time that I just can't believe that it is what it is. Using it depletes the cavalry after 5 seconds. It replenishes over time every 15 seconds, which is fine. You have to finish fully using it before you can use it again, kind of vibe. She moves very quickly. You can't see the survivors, but you can see scratch marks, which that's the whole perspective of fighting spirit, right, is to avoid the scratch marks. There's a directional cue when the killer is approaching a survivor, which which is like easily understandable. And she has a movement speed after she phases back into the real world after using her movement, which is kind of insane, honestly. The husk may disappear with a flashlight, which is interesting, but again, the value of using it for that purpose, it doesn't really bring much to the table. So it kind of is what it is. Then there's passive phasing, which I actually really like that she has this. I like that it's also random. I almost wish that there's a way to like really have her like let this kind of work in a way while she's phasing with the haunting, but I don't want that to become predictable with ease, because like if she phased and then was passively phasing after phasing, it lets you know that she used her power. But then if she was like fully like not phasing at all, and that was like an indication that her power was ready to be used, like conceptually I don't like that. I still like the fear factor that you don't know what the killer is doing, because her unpredictability when she's on a chase with phasing makes her good for that exact reason, But again, the fact that there's certain perks that she gets to utilize that are not initially on her person is the thing that makes her so much more scarier, because her power is just a movement tool, It's an invisible seeking movement tool, and again, her perks, she only has 2 perks that like apply an expose, but it's not like it's not an immediate upon action occurring expose, nor is it one that is like a perma expose, right? It only happens after someone messes with a totem if they feel like even messing with it, or it happens when the doors are open and it's like your last chance to get that one person pretty much, and you just go for it. So, but again, the fact that a perk like Hubris exists is very, very busted for her. It's extremely powerful. It's extremely powerful, because you had to, you know, the thing that you want to do to stop her from coming after you, you can't do that anymore. You gotta, you know, put it down before then so that you don't get exposed, and then that way you at least, you know, delay her. But still, that you know, that timing is not really the most easy, because you might just get unlucky and accidentally stun her, which is crazy to say out loud, but like it does that. So it's really weird. You know, but again, like the fact that she can just phase around with that perk around is just, like I said, it's insanely scary. Now, of course, that being said though, the fact that a lot of her add-ons allow her to extend the duration of her walking while she's phasing, or increase the recovery rate, or, you know, movement speed is very interesting. You know, activating the rate of using the walk is something else. You know, the recovery to reuse it is pretty interesting. Again, it kind of just goes from that point forward too. Like it's all about increasing the duration, the recovery rate, the passive phasing, the speed, you know, all of that stuff while you're this is the most weird looking add-on though. After ending a phase walk, if the husk is still in a certain place, it explodes, blocking vault locations. This doesn't make sense because when you finish phasing, you're not there where the husk was, and so you stop vaults from being there for 5 seconds. It doesn't make sense. Either make that larger and make it affect everything, or make this last a lot longer. It's a really weird add-on. I don't really understand this one. I think that she has a lot of really weird add-ons that, like, for phasing it's really helpful and it's good, but then you have the weird ones like this one where like it does nothing, and so I think it doesn't really bring much to the table. Then you have this one where you know, if you get stunned by a pallet, it instantly recharges the haunting, which again, combined with you like this, it's kind of insane, you know. This one where you come within 2 meters of a husk during a phase walk will trigger Killer Instinct. Again, it's kind of weird because, you know, you have to like forcefully go get distance with the husk. It's interesting that it triggers instinct, so it tells you that somebody was just there, so you got to go back to go get them. It's you know, there is that too. Then you get to have like a very long duration of phase walking, and then you get to recover it very quickly, but you can't move as fast, which is interesting. This is the one, I think that's the point though. You're supposed to combine this add-on where you can basically press a button to go back to the husk and combine it with other stuff, like this one where you like explode stuff nearby, that way. But it's such a very specific weird way to play with this, so it's just like, you know, it's just so weird. Then there's this where, you know, everyone hears the phase walk cue. That's actually kind of cool. This increases too, where like, you know, coming within 4 meters of a survivor during phase walk will trigger Killer Instinct, but then you can't see scratch marks anywhere at all. Like, this kind of crumples her more so than it does help her. It's interesting. I'm not too sure though. And then you have the Mother Dollar Ring, which is like the most insane thing possible, right? This increases movement speed while phase walking by 40%, which is a lot, but you can't see scratch marks when you're visible. But the problem is that you can see scratch marks before you phase, and that's why these two are pretty like bad. Like, they need to make these a lot better. These are pretty not that good, I feel like. From I haven't played Spirit at all, but I can tell you for sure that like you don't need to worry about this, because you can't see the scratch marks during this, but you can see them beforehand. So there's that. And then there's this one where you instantly get, you know, if you break a pallet or a wall, then you instantly get your power back. This does not make sense for it to be an iridescent. Don't know, but you know, like I said, that's Spirit in a nutshell. So I think that her add-ons are really bad for the most part, but playing against her doesn't really matter all too much, because when you in your mind realize it's a spirit, you're like, oh crap, it's spirit. You know, you just have to play spirit the same way you play spirit in any capacity, shape, or form, regardless of her add-ons. The only difference is that her power, it gets stronger by her add-ons, and that's literally all that it does. But the real caveat to playing against a spirit is the fact that the perks she brings with her is the thing that makes her so undeniably powerful. So, you know, phasing is a thing. You know, perks, like I said, whole different story. I can definitely see them doing like a. They should do. I mean, again, to again scratch Mirror Myers effect, right? If I can do something like that, I would make there be some kind of. I would rework this to basically turn this into Scratch Mirror Myers. She can see auras within a certain radius, right? But then she can't move. There's no movement speed during this part. You don't hear the sound cue of the phasing either, or maybe you do. I don't know. Or you combine these two together. There should just, actually there should be another one that just hides the sound cue. Better yet. And you combine that with this, where she can basically walk normal speed, but she can phase pretty much whenever she wants to, but she sees aura of people nearby. And that way, again, you add that crazy ass fear factor for her to be really, 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 really scary. Because I feel like from a certain perspective, she's a very scary killer in terms of like the pressure she can bring to the table. But outside of that, though, I don't really see her being like scary. I mean, she is because she's fast, but that's also because people use expose with her, and that exposed stuff is what makes you kind of go crazy going after her. So that's Spirit in a nutshell. Like I said, whatever that it was beforehand about her, I didn't really mind fighting her too much. I feel like because I had a counter to fight the killer, I wasn't really too worried about it. But now that she like no longer has a check or a counter, they got to figure out some way to make her a little bit more manageable mentally from a survivor perspective, because fighting her is really, really tough. Because again, I think like if there is any perks that are able to counter her, they are very, very bad perks. But again, if you don't know it's a spirit, then you don't really have a simple way to deal with the killer. You gotta just kind of like figure out your own way to mind game against her. But again, I don't mind playing against this killer as long as the killer doesn't have hubris. Literally, this game goes like playing against her goes from like really fun and kind of freaky to completely like rage inducive if the killer goes from being like a regular player as a killer to immediately having hubris. I can't believe that she has this perk power, and it's insanely powerful. So Spirit is pretty interesting.